actual terms of reference, Appendix A, just a couple of comments. First of all, on page 4 of the objectives, 119 at the bottom, it talks about a number of things, and we have made an amendment there. But one of the things that's striking to me is the lack of mention that a major objective ought to be climate change mitigation. This is a huge opportunity municipally and regionally for climate change mitigation. And it should, given where we are at today, clearly this should be, I think, an objective, a major objective, to maximize, to utilize this opportunity for redevelopment, to maximize response to climate change. I really hope that can be included. There are a lot of very good things listed there. There might be some value in deciding which ones are key in some sort of hierarchical organization of them, because something like climate change should be right near the top, in my view, at least. Similarly, if we get down to the scope of work, and when it talks about land use and urban design and placemaking and so on and so forth, natural environment, I think there needs to be language there somewhere about climate change. I'd also like to comment on the Project Advisory Committee on page 8 of the terms of reference. And I think it's great that we're going to have a Project Advisory Committee very early in the process, and that it involves the people that have been indicated there. But I do want to point out that this is an area that is of regional significance. It is probably the #1 opportunity in our entire region to create a new dense community, and in the process help to solve our transportation woes, help to solve issues of climate change, help to solve other issues that are clearly of regional scope. And that's why it was identified in the regional growth strategy, as, by the way, in both Saanich and the City of Victoria, as a major center, and perhaps the most important one outside of downtown Victoria itself. So, because there is that regional significance there, I think it should be recognized on the Project Advisory Committee. And there should be some comment about people who have background and expertise in seeing the ability to use this as a key piece in the development of a vision of regional sustainability, because it is that. There are people, for example, up at UVic Environmental Law, like Deborah Curran, who has a huge amount of knowledge and opportunity in this. There are some of the more informed architects in town, either practicing or not practicing. For example, a gentleman who is involved in Dockside Green and others who really understand and get that regional context and also the sustainability context. And they would be most valued members of that kind of committee. And furthermore, there is the old saying that, you know, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. You obviously want a committee. You obviously want public involvement, public input. But I think it's really advantageous to provide a vision at the start for the public and the committee to respond to. I agree with John Schmuck that processes have sometimes gone along way too long. And that is often the case when you don't have a clearly defined starting point. Because then you spend an awful lot of time getting to some sort of vision that people can roughly agree to, and they perhaps lack the background, and you have to provide the background and the expertise, and it takes a very long time to get there. If you have something out in front to start with, and the committee can tailor it and work with it, and the public as well, then I think we have a chance to finish in that 30-month period or less. If you don't do that, I think we are going to be back where we were with the Shelbourne plant. I do feel that the check-in with council is an excellent idea, because in the end, we will have a committee here of 16 to perhaps plus individuals, very committed, very important. I'm glad they're involved. They won't represent all of Saanich and all of its citizens, and council will have to be the final arbitrator in that respect. So I think it's a good idea to make sure council is involved in that arbitration. Having said all that, this is something we do need to get on with. I heard Rob Wixon. I have been advocating this myself for 20 years, before being on council, and since I've been on council. That's a long time, and it's overdue. And so I hope that we get going and do it in a manner that's expedient as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott. Before I go to Councillor Haynes, I just want to ask our Director of Planning about the partnership with the City of Victoria.
I just wanted to provide clarity that absolutely we spent a significant amount of time, and that's part of the delay, speaking with the City of Victoria. I believe there's a joint council meeting on this. We certainly had strong support from the City of Victoria to do this jointly. Unfortunately, because of funding on the City of Victoria's end, they weren't able to participate fully, and the way that we would obviously all love to have, which is one consultant team that would do the entire corridor from one end to the other. So you're absolutely right. That being said, two of our key staff members, our City of Victoria members, a very strong relationship with the City of Victoria, have continued to meet with and will continue to meet with City of Victoria staff to attempt to make it as seamless as possible, while recognizing that there are two communities and two memberships of the public who may see their communities slightly different, but that thread that connects it, mobility, pedestrian movement, all of those things, amenities, we will do our best absolutely to provide those connections.
If I could respond, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I think probably what is needed is a political push as well, and I will commit to trying to do that, and I hope the council joins me. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Haynes, Workman, and Brown.
I'm not going to repeat what's been said, but maybe a couple of items I'd like to observe. I really like the item 8, which is page 123, on the Project Advisory Committee, the way that's designed. It's very thorough. I like it for a couple of reasons. Today, as an example, he's not here now, but we did get a message from Bob Ferbert when he talks about the local area plans and the community associations. He's wondering how to have a broader catch of the community input. And I directed him to read this page because I think it does that, because you have community associations and in this particular case 5 members at large with different perspectives. And if we come back to page, is this on? Yeah. Page 27, which is 6 of 8 of the local area plan updates, it says right at the bottom there, a project advisory committee could be formed to assist with the updating of the local area plans. I think that has great strength. Now we have to think we have 18 community associations and 12 local area plans, so there will be crossover and integration, such as is described in the advisory committee piece. As we go forward and discuss the community input part, there's also the suggestion from PTED, and as we heard from several community members today, getting this right. If it needs more resources to compress the time, please let's do that. And I'll note one last housekeeping point. Under objectives, we've heard Mr. Whitson talk. Item 8 says integrate public realm improvements, etc., and the future introduction of rapid transit on Douglas Street. Could I ask staff, is that committed to Douglas Street, or is it also optional to put a Burnside there as well?
I mean, certainly the key discussion has been in and around the Douglas corridor. I think when you go into a process like this, the best approach always is to be open to multiple ideas, so I wouldn't say at this point that we would exclude anything being discussed. What we bring forward to you for the check-in then gives us feedback on the reality of Council's support for it and whether or not to pursue it in greater detail.
Correct. Okay, so is this rapid transit on Douglas Street? It doesn't say Douglas Corridor. Could we change that to the Douglas Corridor, or am I getting ahead of myself? I think I am. Okay, I'm finished, thank you.
Assist maybe. There is a transit future plan, which also had a lot of community engagement. And it actually has mapped out sort of Uptown being the hub with the highway, with Pat Bay, with Douglas Street being the spines. And the rapid bus project that is currently underway, as funds will allow, is kind of the precursor to rapid transit. So transit has purchased, properties at Uptown, so that will be the transit hub. I think it would be unwise to sort of hint that perhaps Burnside would be the corridor for rapid transit. Everything is always subject to change until it is cast in stone, but that came as a result of a pretty extensive community consultation process as well, so you can't just kind of wipe that off the map.
Thank you, Councilor. You're good.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Bertram.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate the costing of this project here. It's not 250,000, but it's only 246,000, so I appreciate that. Coming back, I appreciate the report, thank you for it. Probably one concern I have being that council has been sitting since 6 o'clock. When we throw in Cecilia Creek, yeah, let's throw in the watershed. Let's maximize climate change mitigation. And what does maximize mean? And coming back to Cecilia Creek, what are the ramifications of that by just throwing it in? I thought our planner made a good comment or a good reason for not having it in, but we chose to throw it in anyway. Again, at this late hour, I just question it. A question I do have of our planning staff. I think it's good to have a vision. I believe it's good to have a plan. But I've always found it hard to understand how you could really have a plan without allowing some pre-zoning so you know what it's going to look like. Do you see this, or do we carry on like we have in the past, where we just do it day by day and whatever turns up, and however we feel, that's the way it goes?
It's rather timely that you asked that question this evening. The community contribution, the amenity contribution, that would form part of that report, absolutely, because it's one way to ask something of the development community, but give them something back, which is that certainty of pre-zoning land. So that will be one of the ideas that's included there, absolutely. Whether council supports it or not, obviously, is the decision of council.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Wortman. Just before I go to Councilor Brownell, I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to go past 11 o'clock here. So I'll take a motion, Mayor Atwell, that we'll go past 11. Is there a seconder? Councilor Brownell, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed? Really? No one's opposed? All right, well, we'll do it then. Councilor Brownell, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, on the Project Advisory Committee makeup, we have one member from the Saanich Youth Council, and then when we go down to 5 at large, it says seniors or youth issues. So I'm not sure it's one or the other. I think it's both, isn't it?
Councilor Brownell, through the chair. The intention there is with the members at large, if there's individuals who could bring multiple areas of expertise, so for example, someone who's interested in environment, but also youth, and that would be looked upon favorably. So that's the intention there, even though we'll have representatives of the Youth Council. Obviously, as we get into the deliberations around that, if we have a member of the Youth Council that's part of the committee, that may downplay the need to have a youth representative as one of the members at large.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take away from anyone, but I don't think it's either or. That's what I'm saying, because of the demographic changes that we're experiencing. That's all. And so I'll just make a couple of comments. I like the Project Advisory Committee. Of course, Shelburne had that, and that's probably a lot of the reasons we've ended up with however many years, because it kept changing. So we're really going to have a handle on this. I've always known that we work with Victoria on a regular basis. I like the update with the public engagement part. that's been added to fully represent what we've adopted. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be important for those, the technical working representatives as well. So you got the ministry, but you got transit and Sancho Engineering, but then CRD, because CRD has a fair bit of interest in this, watersheds and others. So I like the refinement and look forward to it getting going again. Thanks.
Okay. I have no other hands to speak to this one, so I had Councillor Plant with the motion earlier. I think what needs to be said on this has been said, so I won't say anything more other than I'm very pleased to see this getting going. That 6-year-old I mentioned earlier was not born when we started this one. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That one carries. And now, Madam Clerk, for the final time this evening, I'll ask you to introduce the item.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair. This next,
Oh, you're right. I apologize.
that is correct. There are 2 items that under this provision here. For item 5, we have the work plan for the community planning section. This is the report from the Director of Planning recommending the Council endorse the community planning work plan option 1 with the balanced focus that identifies future priorities for 3 streams of work: local area plan updates, center and corridor plans, and policy initiatives. Council further referred to Committee of the Whole the recommendation that was earlier from the Planning, Transportation and Economic Development Advisory Committee that Council consider allocating adequate manpower and resources to the Planning Department for updating the local area plans.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So just a quick stage managing question before we move into this. Are you going to look for us to consider those separately?
That would be correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I see somebody queuing up the PowerPoint. Are there any questions before we get going? No? You're up again.
So, I'm back here to present, and my apologies, this is a bit of a longer presentation. I'll try to keep it about 20 minutes, but the content is very substantial, and I'll try to move through it as quickly as possible, given the late hour, but I really want to focus on some key points as we move along. So the reason why I'm before you here today is present a report on the community planning work plan, and specifically we're looking for direction from Council on 3 items. One is the allocation of resources between 3 areas of community planning work: local area plan updates, center and corridor plans, and policy initiatives. Number 2 is direction for priorities for local area plan updates and center and corridor plans. Those first 2 items are embedded within the community planning work plan options. And then lastly, through the local area planning program terms of reference, looking for a council endorsement of a standard process for updating local area plans. The presentation will cover off a couple of different areas, talk about some of the background in terms of how we got here today, go over some work plan options which Council is considering today, talk about the process for how we established local area planning priorities and other priorities in the work plan, and then finally talk about the local area planning program terms of reference. So the background and kind of the impetus for this report and this project is through the strategic plan, Council provided direction to update all 12 local area plans. When staff received that direction, they held a number of workshops with community association members to get a sense with the fundamental question being, do we want to change how we go about updating local area plans, or do we want to stick to a more conventional approach where we chronologically update them through a comprehensive process that would typically take 18 to 24 months. So one of the first things that we did when we met with community associations was get a sense of what some of the key issues were in their neighborhoods, as well as some of the key issues around local area planning. And there was a whole host of things raised, many of which would not typically be addressed in a local area plan, but a number of things around land use and transportation and environment that were big issues. But in terms of local area plans in particular, in the process of updating them. There were a couple of key themes that we heard. Number one was to focus planning attention where change is occurring. Number two was concerns around the speed of plan development implementation, which Mr. Smuck has touched on earlier today. And then also providing better connection to Saanich and regional plans, be it other planning initiatives, projects by the Parks and Engineering departments, or initiatives by the CRD or neighboring municipalities. So with that direction, council, our staff held a number of different workshops with the community associations. In the first workshop, we heard loud and clear that people wanted to, community associations members wanted to move away from that conventional approach of updating local area plans. As we explored that a little bit more, we got into community planning initiatives at large, and how local area plans could be most efficiently updated in concert with some of those other initiatives. So those three streams of work, which I'll touch on throughout the presentation, are the local area plan updates, center and corridor plans, and policy initiatives. So we through the course of the workshop and through private feedback ballots, we had fairly strong support for an approach that divided resources between those three initiatives. So just briefly talking on those three streams of community planning work and exactly what we mean by them. So they're local area plans, center and corridor plans, and policy initiatives. So local area plans, as you're all aware, really are our primary planning tool that provides a comprehensive vision and plan for a neighborhood. They're really a foundational part of our planning system. And they were last updated between 1997 and 2007, hence the direction from council to provide updates. Center and corridor plans really are something that are relatively more recent and really directed by the directions in the most recent official community plan of 2008, which focused on centers and corridors and villages as the primary areas to accommodate future growth. One of the distinctions here is that these areas don't necessarily follow established local area boundaries, but really focus on the scope of the issue being addressed. An example here is the Shelburne Valley Action Plan. In the report and the proposal that staff are putting forward, we've identified 5 center and corridor areas. The Shelburne Valley Action Plan, which includes 3 centers and 1 village. The Uptown area, which you just approved the updated terms of reference, as well as the Quadra Corridor, the Royal Oak Center, Broadmead Village, and Tillicum Center, Gorge Village as the 5 main areas. And these 5 areas really are the areas that we really want to see the majority of new growth and change and new residents and jobs located in Saanich. So these plans are really critical from that perspective. The third stream of community planning work is the policy initiatives. And really these are the more flexible part of the planning system, and typically they address a key issue often common across neighborhoods. So something like the secondary suites project is a good example. It could be things like infill housing or urban agriculture plans. One of the things that can also be undertaken under this stream is plans that address a fairly small geographic area, be it 2 blocks or a sub-area of a local area. And really, they're typically much more focused initiatives that would take in the order of 6 to 12 months to complete. So the work plan that's presented today that looks more broadly beyond just local area plans, but looks at all of the initiatives undertaken by the community planning department and how to organize and prioritize that work, really has 3 primary objectives. One is to update all 12 local area plans. To reflect the sustainability objectives of the official community plan and also address neighborhood issues in a comprehensive manner. Secondly, to develop plans for the 5 center and corridor areas where the majority of growth and change is anticipated. And lastly, to undertake policy initiatives to strategically address planning issues. So in the council report and what you have before you to consider tonight, there's 3 different work plan options that look at different approaches to addressing each of those 3 streams of work. And really they're primarily based on how council chooses to allocate resources to each of those areas. The first option is a balanced focus that distributes resources fairly equally. The second one looks at really putting a focus on local area plan updates. And the third one looks at putting more of a focus on center and corridor plans. So this is a chart that essentially is a timeline over the next 10 plus years in terms of priorities for local area plan updates, center and corridor plans, and policy initiatives. This is option one, as I mentioned, the balanced focus, which is recommended by staff. It was something that it's an approach that allows all three streams of work to be addressed on an ongoing basis. If you can kind of think of this scenario as one staff in each stream addressing each of the projects. This was an approach that was supported by the majority of community association members when we had the meeting. There were some other opinions in terms of approaches to take, but this one was fairly strongly supported. Option two looks at more of a focus on local area planning and really making the update of local area plans in the near term a clear focus, with the intention that 2 local area plans would be completed at a time. From a staff resource perspective, you probably think about this as 2 staff working on local area plans with a 3rd staff member alternating between policy initiatives and center and corridor plans. The last option, which was added subsequent to the meeting with community associations, the 3rd workshop, was an approach that looked at more of a center and corridor focus. The intention here is that the center and corridor plans would be completed in a 5 to 6 year time period. And really this would allow planning to take place for those areas where we anticipate the major change. So from a planning perspective, there is a fairly strong rationale. However, one of the consequences of this option is that the local area plans would not begin to be updated until approximately year 6. From a resource allocation perspective, just to summarize, the option 1 really looks at that balanced approach where there's equal distribution amongst the 3 streams. Option 2 looks at more of a focus on local area plans, while option 3 looks at more of a focus on center and corridor plans. From a financial perspective, Council has provided funding for the first for the Uptown Douglas Corridor Plan, as well as the development of the first 2 local area plans. So a lot of the project scheduling there is dependent on ongoing funding and resourcing of the projects. The recommendation that staff have in the report is to endorse the community planning work plan option, the balanced focus. So one of the items that you saw in those community planning work plan charts, in addition to the resource allocation, was a sequencing of the different local area plans and the center and corridor plans. And I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of the process we went through to arrive at how those plans would be sequenced. So for each of the 3 streams, there's a slightly different approach. The first one, the local area plans, there's a set of criteria which I'll explain. The center and corridor plans, they're largely established through projects that have been completed or underway right now. And then it's proposed for the policy initiatives that Council prioritize those items through the strategic planning sessions. So in looking at the local area plans to update and what order to update them in, there's 12 plans altogether. 10 of those plans are a full updates proposed. For the two other plans, the Shelburne Local Area Plan and Saanich Core Local Area Plan, only a minor update is proposed at this juncture. And the rationale for that is that over 50% of their land areas would be addressed through the center and corridor planning. So in terms of looking at an efficient distribution, allocation, use of resources, it's thought that a comprehensive plan is perhaps not the best tool to address those particular plans. In the instance of the Shelburne Local Area Plan, the Shelburne Valley Action Plan addresses the majority of areas that are of a higher change perspective. I think about 53% of the Shelburne Local Area Plan is covered off in that Shelburne Valley Action Plan boundaries. There still would be some capacity to do planning work there through some of the policy initiatives or a small area study if issues arose. With the Saanich Core Local Area Plan, virtually all of that area would be covered off through the Uptown Douglas Corridor Plan and the Quadra Corridor Plan. So in prioritizing the remaining 10 plans, 5 criteria were established, and each of the local areas will run through these criteria. The first 2 criteria are primarily related to past and future development. So the first one looks at recent development activity. The second one looks at projected dwelling unit increases in each of the different local areas. The third one is around the age of the existing plan. The fourth is around the presence of a village not addressed in the center and corridor plans. And then lastly, coverage in center and corridor plans, and I have a slide for each of these. So this map here, each dot indicates a major development or subdivision application. And one of the criteria we're looking at is recent development activity. So this is over a 5-year period. And for each of the neighborhood associations, they were ranked on the density of development applications per square kilometer. And the general approach to ranking is that the area of the highest priority, so in this instance it would be North Quadra, was assigned the highest points for, or highest priority for a local area plan update. The second criteria looked forward a bit more and used some of the work that the CRD has done as part of their regional growth strategy update, where they did population projections to 2038 by traffic area zones, completed by Urban Futures. So we use that data to assess what are the projected population increases in each of the local areas over the next 20 plus years. And then once again, it was rated to a density or per hectare, so to give us